Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Spider Sound Off. This is Tom.
And this is Porter.
Well, we've got a great treat for us and a treat for you is we just finished recording a conversation with Coach Mooney. Any initial thoughts before we move on to that conversation with our audience?
Just that, I really do think, the pieces are in place for a good run down the stretch. I know it's hard with recency bias coming off some tough losses, but I really do think the ingredients are there to make a run and to be dangerous in March.
Yeah, so enjoy that conversation with Coach, and we will be back with you sometime this weekend, hopefully after a big win at GW.
And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Spider Sound Off. We are joined by a very special guest this morning, Coach Chris Mooney of the men's team. Welcome, Coach, to Spider Sound Off.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, our pleasure.
We know it's not probably super fun to do media the day after a tough loss, but we do appreciate you coming on. We know that you're going to be busy getting ready for the next game, but definitely it's an excitement for us having the head coach of the men's team join Spider Sound Off. Quick question for you. So my social feed showed me a picture just yesterday of you with the two Martellis. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah. Philip Martelli, the current head coach of ECU, Philip's son goes to collegiate with my son, Danny, and I was on the basketball team. They're in the same grade, both sophomores. And so we've been able to see each other actually probably about 4 or 5 of the games. And then Coach Martelli was in town. They had played St. Joe's, I guess, on MLK Day, and stayed in town and went by and caught the game. So that was great. We sat together, hung out, and talked Philadelphia stories and A10 basketball for a while. So it was great to see Coach Martelli, and I've known Philip forever, and great family and really, really, really nice people.
Did the younger Martelli congratulate you on joining his father in the most A10 wins category?
He did not mention that. Mention that.
So I'm just going to say that might be a little bit of dartboard material for the upcoming VCU games. That's an obvious snub, Coach. So we're just pointing that out.
For sure.
So, but tell us about what it means just to be on the list with Chaney and Martelli as the winningest A10 coach in history for conference games.
Yeah, this morning, it doesn't mean so much, but it's what's interesting about it is that I'm from Philadelphia, and have known Coach Martelli and knew Coach Chaney forever. Essentially my whole life, and or my whole since I was in high school, and those guys are icons in Philadelphia basketball. Coach Chaney was one of the most unique, successful, and amazing coach. You couldn't, when you would drive through Philadelphia, his saying was "winning is an attitude," and you really couldn't go too many days without seeing that on a billboard or a commercial. It was became Temple University's slogan. He came to watch me play. We used to play in the Sunny Hill League, which was at Temple and St. Joe's, the games in the summer, and I had been playing pretty well, and Coach Chaney came to see me play, and he just told me, "Yeah, you played inside the whole time." So he was moving on, but even that was a thrill. And Coach Martelli, I think probably has raised more money for Coaches versus Cancer than most of the other coaches combined. He was a high school coach at Bishop Kenrick, which is in the Philadelphia Catholic League, which is where I played, and then a 10-year assistant at St. Joe's. And again, those guys really embody Philadelphia basketball. I've probably been at 10 banquets where Coach Martelli spoke, and they could be CYO banquets or high school banquets, Philadelphia Catholic League banquets, just, so good with his time, and, represents everything that Philadelphia basketball and the Philadelphia Catholic League aspires to. And so for me, those guys, there'd be no category I could be in with them. So that makes it certainly special and surreal. But I look at those guys in a far different category than just basketball coaches.
Did you get to coach against Chaney your first year at Richmond?
Yes, I did. And, they played, of course, famously a matchup zone. And but different than the matchup zone we played. They would play a bit more of a zone defense and tailor it to their opponent, whereas we played our matchup zone was very much man-to-man switching first, and then, exchange, staying in our spots on certain cuts and things. And they played us a 1-3-1 zone. And, it's funny, you see the matchup zone on TV and it feels like, well, just, move the ball, get it to the high post. And then, you have 3 6'10" guys and 2 6'5" guards. I think 2 of the guards played in the NBA. And it was a long day. As a matter of fact, we played there, and then went to St. Joe's a few days later, and really got crushed in both games, and we were pretty outmatched. And there's a kind of a famous, among the guys on the team, a famous speech that I gave after the St. Joe's game. It was the second part of that trip, and I was not only felt bad about the results of the game, but it was in Philadelphia. It was my first time coaching, and we really weren't in either game. And I just talked about that when these guys came back to visit school, the program would be unrecognizable. And we'd have guys in the gym all the time, guys who wanted to play, guys who were here, played together, and all that kind of thing. And so that was pretty special. Those guys, I remember celebrating with them in Atlantic City, when we won the A10 tournament in 10 or 11. And so it's pretty special, full circle moment that began with a very tough trip to Philadelphia.
Yeah. Nice. So to take you back to the present for a second, year to date, you've got 20 games worth of data now. What are we doing well at Richmond Basketball, and what do we need to work on?
Yeah. I would say that we are, with the exception of the St. Joe's game, I feel like we are playing with energy. We have some groups out there, and rewatching some of the games, whether it's Bob Black or a national broadcast team, pointing out how small we are at times. And that's true, but I think we are making up for that with playing with energy, and we're moving well. I think in conference we're averaging, like 8 turnovers a game, even though we generally pass the ball more than most teams. So we're have more possessions because of the pace we're trying to play at. I think we're playing, with the exception of the St. Louis game, we're playing well defensively. We're, so there are some positive things there. I think that what we need to improve on is, we probably need to take a few more threes. We're shooting a very good percentage from 3. We have some guys who can score in the mid-range: Aiden, David Thomas, Will Johnston, AJ Lopez. And I'm not, I think we need to get ourselves easier 2-point baskets. So part of playing in transition and playing up tempo by design, that helps you get a few easier 2s and 3s. I want us to be able to get easier 2-point baskets. So, even the play, Jonathan Beagle turned his ankle yesterday at a nice post move, spun the baseline. He had a tip in on 2 possessions before that. So you want to try to get easier 2-point baskets. Can you generate those in transition off of turnovers? Can you generate those in our low post touches? Can you generate those like we have over the years on cuts to the basket? We just need to find a few more of those, while also focusing on taking more catch and shoot 3s, which we've really converted on at a high rate. So I think that's offensively. I think defensively, we've stolen the ball a little bit here. With Mike and Jonathan have been great defensive rebounders, with their status unknown for today and for the immediate future. That's going to be more of a challenge. We need Jaden Daughtry to play as he did last night, because he's a dynamic player, very unique. So we need these things to all happen. AJ being in foul trouble really hurt last night because of the other, players we had that weren't in the game. So I think there's a laundry list always. If you're an undefeated team, there's a laundry list of things that you could do better. But I would say it boils down to that. Can we get easier 2s, focus on shooting more threes that are these catch and shoot threes that we're very good at, and then defensively even be scrappier, and you know, I don't want to take too many chances necessarily, but when we have those opportunities to turn teams over, to force shot clock violations, really dig in those moments.
It's interesting. You talked about Daughtry. I remember earlier in the year when he started playing more, you made the comment of like both he's learning our system and the system's learning how to use him. And you mentioned easier twos because the thing that I'm sure is not part of your plan is when he's at the 3-point line and has to back his player all the way down to score. He's good at that, but it's like, how do you get him as an example of like those easier twos? He seems to always have to work super hard to score.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect question. He is good at that, and that is part of basketball these days.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the balance, and him missing the summer has an impact on that because that we recognize that he can do these, the 2 steals and dunks that he had last night in transition, and some of the baskets he had are just, they seem very easy, and that's really, really nice during the course of a game. What the balance is kind of utilizing his unique skill set, which can result in easy twos, and as I think he gets better and better, shots for other people too, because he's a good passer. And then also having him just master how we're trying to play, and I think he'll get easier twos if he masters how we're trying to play. But it's taxing. It's hard. You're preparing for the next game. You're reviewing. You're going over your special situations, and you're trying to get these things to happen. So we're tempted to rely on his unique skill set, and you're tempted to say, throw him the ball and back your man in, and let's see what happens. And he's tempted to do that because he's so good at it. And so, how can we start to make it that he gets a backdoor cut, a drop off pass like he got from Will Johnston? Catches the ball closer to the block, so it's not as taxing on him to get himself into the lane. So, yeah, I think that's the progress we're trying to make, and we recognize, and he recognizes what he can bring. And I think when we get there, it'll be great. It'll be wonderful. But it's a little bit of a road to get there, and we're going to keep working at it as hard as we can.
Coach, I attended 2 practices this year, one early summer, one in September. In early summer, Argabright looked good, and by the end of the summer, he looked amazing. And then early summer, Will Harper looked a little bit lost, full disclosure. That's a podcaster's opinion. And right now, he's looking like, a real weapon for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how encouraging it is to see Argabright's progress in the system and then Harper's progress in the system, and then talk about kind of what it's like for an incoming player to, come up to speed to where they're a meaningful asset, in A10 play?
Yeah. Another great question. I think that we have this, among the videos that we show to recruits on campus that kind of talks about how we play. And, there's a clip of me saying, when a guy has a very good sense for the game, it's pretty easy because the patterns and the reads make sense to him. So somebody who doesn't have quite as good of a feel, he might start to try to memorize what he's supposed to do. But the guys who have a good feel instinctually, they would have cut there anyway, or they would have made that decision anyway. So then it's just blending it and make, the positives of it are that it doesn't stop. There's always something to go to. So for Aiden, among his great attributes, his quickness, his confidence and fearlessness, he really has a great sense. And, I think that's why one of the reasons he's been to the free throw line so much, and, understanding not when to attack in terms of when the coach wants you to attack, but when to attack when your player's off balance or when your defender's looking the other way, or, whatever the case may be. So that is something that has really gotten better and been enhanced. And Will Harper, I think, same way, I think Will's overwhelming positives are his competitiveness and his confidence. And, even last night's game, I might have the timing wrong, but there's about 3 minutes to go and he makes a drive in from the left wing. And, we're a little bit, last night without the centers, who's really the hub of what we're trying to do, we're a little bit, um, we were moving well, but a little bit back and forth, so to speak. And so him making a drive because he is confident enough to sees the crease, whatever, gets himself to the free throw line. That's pretty impressive. And anybody knew, I think the way we play is a little bit different. I think if you asked all the guys who have played here, they now believe, they believe this is the way you play. So it's, we've talked about in the transfer portal era, do you dumb things down or do you make it, I shouldn't say dumb things down. Do you simplify what maybe you're trying to do? Well, then it becomes all about the talent that you're able to get. And so if you can play in a style and sign the guys who have this good feel and can pass and really not only understand but embrace the style of play, and that can be a significant advantage. And so to do it as freshmen is impressive. We've had freshmen do it before, but probably maybe not to the level Aiden has. And I think Will Harper more and more is going to become that much more integral part of this team.
That shows your confidence in Harper that he was on the floor with 2 minutes to play last night. He's really come just so far this year. That's just worth mentioning because I think it's definitely impressive, his progress.
Agreed.
Yeah, we remember we put it in that pod of that practice that was a practice where you were at moments having to flip the microphone up to correct some things that Will was doing. So it is fun for us to have experienced that moment and now see him out on the court. Where I think the average fan is like, well, he went from not playing to playing, but we've seen that practice where it was where he was playing and not playing the way you were hoping or wanted at the time, and it's kind of fun to see that progress dramatically, really, for him on the court.
Huge step
in the last month
for him. So
good. I appreciate that. That's great.
Awesome. Question for you. This is just a random question. So, stoppages in play. I've always wondered, you guys the coaches huddle on one side, the players sit in a semicircle. Usually one coach is talking to the players while the other three coaches are talking to each other. Tell us about what do you guys talk about in that little coach's side huddle? And then how do you communicate what you talk about to the players?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, some of the coaches huddles aren't suitable for even this podcast, but, so the interesting point is when, I don't know if I think I was here and people started to bring out the little chairs for the timeout huddle, and like a lot of things is like, well, that seems silly. What's the big deal? And then of course we started to bring out the little chairs for the timeout huddle. And one reason we do it, how we do it is we meet as coaches on the baseline. And that's so that I'm not, because if we went out toward half court and came into the huddle the other way, which we used to do, then I'm tempted to maybe talk to the official. And so we changed it so that the coaches would just immediately go toward the baseline so that there's no temptation to talk to the official about a previous play or anything like that. And so that was very, very, strategic and specific. Like we wanted to make sure to limit that access.
Yeah.
And then the coaches, to be honest with you, the assistants, are critical in that huddle just because, that the head coach tends to, in a one way positive, see the whole thing, and including the negatives, and then the assistants tend to see the play that usually the coach who has the scout is in there. Usually the coach is on offense. The coach is talking about defense. So and is talking about what should we run next? How are they guarding the ball screen? What can we do there? Which kind of gets me back to focusing on the specifics and not, hey, why didn't he play well, and or why didn't he make that decision, or can you believe he dropped that ball, and gets me a little bit more focused. And then often we've kind of had this little bit of a tradition here that we want a guy to sit in my seat before I get there, and so we've had different guys do it. Jacob Gilliard, would do it sometimes. Kevin Hovde would do it when he was a player here. Grant Golden once in a while. Although he was so sweaty, we kind of didn't want him to. I didn't want him to do it.
It's a different part of the strategy.
And we just wanted guys to be in there. Delani Hunt, to be in there, and because we want the circle to be nice and tight, and we want the guys to have some talking in there, and maybe the guys who are in the game or in those little chairs are tired, or they just got a Charlie horse, so that all those things are happening. So we want there to be a little bit of discussion there, not to be quiet. And then usually when I get in, it's really more just the next play, what we're going to do once we get into the huddle. When I was younger, it was probably a little bit more ranting and raving in those huddles. And that still exists sometimes, but it's usually a little bit more of, hey, this is what we want to do on this next play, whether we're on offense or defense.
It's interesting. I reflect on something that Mike Wall said, I think earlier this year, I think it was during the summer, was that talking about last year's team, that when Delani went down, everyone was like, well, that was our one leader. And what do we do now? And Mike was saying, like, with this unit, there's a lot of leaders. And I think I've seen that, but I want to talk about kind of with whether it's Johnston or it's Mike, like, it seems like you've got a broader leadership team this year, which obviously helps you have that coach on the court as you go forward.
Yes. I think that I agree. I think Will Johnston, I think he has natural leadership qualities. Obviously, when you grow up playing point guard and have the ball, that's just, that's your most natural position to be a leader. And the type of leader that he is, he's calm, he's positive, he's thoughtful. He's very, very good. And he's also, whether he's in the game or out, he's in tune, and he's really on it, and has, really good. I love the kid. He's really, from that standpoint, just tremendous. I think, Mike and, the guys who have been here have that advantage. And I think Mike leadership a lot, he'll often not want to come out at practice and wants to get more reps. And, there are some days when you're, like right now, where we're going to play 3 games in 7 days, where, you want to not skip anything, but you also want to make sure that you prioritize guys being fresh. And Mike really wants all the reps and attacks those reps at 100%. Very impressive. And talks throughout those reps. And then when we do drag him out, talks while he's out. So that's really positive. I think Jaden Daughtry, Jaden is the most dynamic player maybe that we've had. And he's an emotional player, which is extremely positive in some respects, and can be, when he's neutral, that can be a negative because we want to feel his energy and emotion. But he's really, really, and his are a fearlessness, for the moment, for the opponent, for an away game. And that's really important, and I think that Aiden and Will Harper are going to grow into leadership guys. Certainly Aiden, again, having the ball, already having done a lot in his brief career. So yeah, we do have ways to go to stretch that. Sometimes, I've thought leadership has, in general, declined over the years from players, and I say that because, one, obviously the moving around and guys aren't as, it's much easier to be a leader when it's the 35th time you've gone into halftime trailing, and you need to be ready, and you understand the coach is going to be upset. Oh, it's just much easier. Secondly, the guys, there was a time when guys would be considering transfers, and the team would not beat them up, but they were really offended, and they had such ownership of the program that they were they didn't want that, and they wanted the guy to understand. And now, the more the way guys act is very respectful of each other's journey, and that seems to take priority over the team. And that I think has impacted leadership. Remember Kendall Anthony? I mean, he would get on guys, and Kendall's playing his senior year, and he's got a 7 a.m. lift and a 2 o'clock shooting session and 3 o'clock practice, and watching film after the game after practice. That that grinds on someone who feels like he's not getting the most out of his teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And so you lose that to a certain extent. And so with Will, we're lucky, Mike being a fourth-year senior, with Will being a natural leader, we're pretty lucky to have that. And hopefully that impacts some of our younger guys as well.
That's awesome. Switching to the portal for a second, we had Jim Merritt on talking in a previous episode about kind of raising money for the payment of players and some of the challenges and opportunities that we have here at Richmond. And Tom has just recently done a little bit of research on some of the changes with the portal.
Well, obviously, you're living this change. Like, I think my understanding, the current roster is like the old model, the collective, and now you've got the new model. And there was just a change in the last week. Love to get your thoughts on it, where they changed the dates. I think it used to be, I say used to, like it's always been that way. But last year it was, after the first weekend of the tournament, the portal opens. Like that naturally creates a bunch of conflicts of like, when do you start talking to your existing players? When do you start recruiting new players? They've moved it to the day after the tournament, and now it's 15 days. Like, what's your and that's effective immediately. So, what was kind of your general thoughts when that change came out?
Yeah, to be honest, fellas, it's completely irrelevant and doesn't matter. I mean, the portal's open 365 days a year. That's just semantics, and that's just what the rule looks like. But the day after the national championship, my wife is Cuban, and so Hurricanes fans, and then Fernando Mendoza seems like the greatest story in sports history. And the next day his brother transferred to Georgia Tech after the most magical. So obviously that's in place a long time ago, and that's after the greatest thing that ever happened. So it's completely irrelevant. Every word we're using these days, like the portal opening or closing, the contract, eligibility, all those words mean nothing. I mean, it really all means nothing. So, in terms of, I hope this isn't a silly thought here that, in the future, we really want to have retention at Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I believe in. If you looked at Jai Bailey, who's a wonderful Spider, if you looked at his stats for his first 3 years, there'd be no predicting that he'd be one of the most important players on the A-10 championship team his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens because he was here, and we had hard emotional conversations in my office, and, all that goes into it. And I'm not necessarily saying it should go back to the old way, but we really want retention because of what Richmond is, and what we want Richmond basketball to be. And also we think that's the best way for Richmond basketball to be good. It doesn't feel like we're going to go out and sign somebody from the G League or be able to attract an NBA prospect, that we're going to do it as Coach Tarrant did it, as Coach Beeline did it, with guys who were here and appreciate, love Richmond, and pour their heart out for Richmond. And I don't want that to sound naive. I think it's also a basketball strategy. But those changes could not be, in my world, those changes could not be less relevant. You guys can enter the portal at any time. They call them contracts. Really, they're just agreements to be paid,
Mm.
while the school has to reserve a roster spot and pay the player. Um, they talk about roster limits or eligibility. Ohio State just signed somebody who's already played 5 years. Um, Alabama signed a guy from the G League. Baylor signed a guy from the G League. It's not only that whether those things are right or wrong, that's to be determined by whomever. It's that nobody even knows what rules we're playing by. So,
Yep.
those things are just completely irrelevant in our world.
How does then, because I'm looking at Richmond's roster. You have kind of some really promising, I'll use the words underclassmen now on the team. So like, how do you guys, have conversations during the season, with those underclassmen to let them know the importance of the Richmond way and what you're building?
Yeah. Again, that's probably the most important thing. I would say the natural, I have mentioned this to a lot of parents over the years of in recruiting and of our younger players. I believe we've had the rookie of the year 3 times. I think we've had all rookie team players say 7 or 8 times. I can remember 100 tough days for all of those freshmen. I can barely remember any good ones. And those are the guys who did great by any standard. If you're an all rookie in a 14 team league at this level, you're a pretty good player who had a
Yeah, for sure.
pretty magical freshman year. And I can remember all the hard times, and Kevin Anderson, Kendall Anthony, DeMonte Buckingham, Nick Sher. It is hard. Weightlifting,
Mhm.
film study, the physicality of practice. You go in practice and you enter that second hour, and the guy you're competing against, it's his 500th practice and it's your 15th.
Yep.
You have no advantage there. And you can't believe that you're practicing after a 1 hour lift.
Right.
So that's now then you start to see the benefits of it, hopefully, because your body's stronger, your understanding of basketball is better, the competition level, the camaraderie that's built, the level of care we want to provide at Richmond. So, but it is hard. And so you want to be able to see some of those bright spots, obviously games at the Robins Center, the travel, playing in big time atmosphere, being on TV, all those things. You want to see some of those bright spots so you can get by the frustration and your body's tired and all of those things. So, we want those guys to be good. We're going to be very proactive with those guys in terms of our commitment to them. And we want, we always want that. We've even, the guys we've redshirted, we have high hopes for. The guys who are playing, we have high hopes for. And, most importantly, I want them to graduate from Richmond. And we're going to do everything we can from the supporters of the program to the collective to the board, everything on down to make sure that we have those guys in Richmond basketball uniforms their whole career.
Hey, just a tactical question. Do like most players today have an agent? So you've got like the player conversation and then there's the separate kind of money conversation with the agent. Is that kind of the way of the world right now?
Yes. I would say that 80% of them have an agent. I would say probably maybe speaking generally, not just on Richmond, I'd say half of the guys our level and up have a licensed aid, like a real agency agent.
Yep.
Some of them have somebody representing them who might not be licensed or might be a friend or something like that. But yeah, we have those conversations, and that part, to be honest, that cleans up some of the or I should say that it gets to the point of the recruiting a little bit more quickly. And I don't begrudge anybody for having an agent. I think that's fine and good, especially, I have an agent and, I want him to look out for the best of me, and my job's Richmond basketball. His job is me. And, for the players, I'll remind them of that. Those guys, they want them to play well, but we need guys who want Richmond to play well. But that has not been an issue. That has been something that's pretty seamless and has gone very well for us.
Yeah.
Speaking of agents, Tom's my agent, but so far the perks have not been good. And really,
he's sick. Now he's losing his voice.
I'm questioning, like the seat's uncomfortable that I'm in, right? Like we need a better backdrop for the future seasons. So
yeah, that's right.
One more question for you. We do have a lot that we want to cover, but I mentioned to Jason we would love to get you back after the season where we have more time to talk about roster, like what's your team building philosophy, things like that. And you'll hear me use the word analytics, and I know I'm probably the annoying analytics guy. All of that we'll save for the off season. You mentioned the red shirts. Tell us a little bit about, because we haven't talked about Donovan Richardson or Hominick. Tell us how hard they're working, what you're seeing out of those guys in practice.
Yeah, we've redshirted a lot of guys over the years, and so we've always had pretty much a formula and a plan for those guys. And one, we always take the red shirt who is a perimeter player and make him the point guard of the scout team. And whether he's a point guard or not, there's a gigantic amount of responsibility because you're learning the other team's offense and systems as you begin your every day, and so now you're learning ours, you have to know ours, theirs, and you have to direct people. And we do that to, give them the most exposure to college basketball. And so that's what Donovan's doing. And that's something I think Donovan can be very good at, and we want to really keep working on him with. And then those guys also get in day of game workouts for about 35 minutes, hard workouts for their shooting, drives, pick and roll, reads, all those kinds of things. So that's an extra 35 workouts a year. They do extra lifts. So we're really trying to maximize their time. And we talk about from the day they decide to redshirt, they have 365 days with incredible facilities, a strength coach, a full staff of coaches that we really want to see improvement for those guys in those days. And we over the course of time. Dylan, a little bit different because he's a big guy. It's a real challenge to be a big guy on our roster. I've always thought, on these advanced statistics and analytics, TJ and Grant Golden were like off the charts in terms of their usage rates and all these things. I've always wondered or hoped that we'd have, some of the best big guys in the country, their parents call and just say, hey, we'd really love to go to Richmond because you get the ball so much, you make so many decisions. And now more and more teams are playing like that, but it's hard because, when you're a big guy, you've learned a lot of things like your footwork in the post and your strength and being tough. And while we also emphasize that, we're also asking you to make decisions and passes and handle the ball. And so Dylan has improved tremendously. And Mike and Beagle have really helped him to be able to do that. So that's positive. Bryson and Jalen Robinson, who redshirted last year, same thing. They showed great improvement. Jalen, we're seeing it a little bit more and more in the games, and Bryson hasn't quite cracked the lineup yet, a harder lineup to crack because we're playing so many guys. But those are a big 365 days. And it's something I think we'll continue to do. Actually, I think it's something that'll be more prevalent in college basketball across the board because the opportunity to earn money in a fifth season. So it used to be something that, and still is, sometimes, the player feels embarrassed because, he came from the poisonous trail of recruiting where he was told how great he was and how important he was and how I don't know how the program existed before he got here to have to say, well, I'm going to redshirt. And it feels like he's saying, I'm not good enough to play, when really they're investing a whole year in me because they think so highly of me. Now, that's a message that's a little bit harder to convey, but I think now with the financial piece, that might be a little bit easier for guys, and guys might be looking forward to that a little bit more than they have in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about that, but it makes so much sense. Like you've got 5 years of college income, at least in today, if you believe those rules.
For now.
Yes, for now. Anyway, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got a big game on Saturday. Hopefully you have at least one or maybe two centers who can play.
Yeah.
So hopefully they rest up. And it sounds like the snow and sleet and all of that will be later. So
right.
You hopefully not interfere with anything Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Coach, we really appreciate you coming on. Look forward to talking to you again, and good luck this weekend.
Guys, thank you very much. Always appreciate talking to you guys.
Hey, thanks, Coach.
Chris.
Thanks.